Well, there's nothing quite like the feeling of rolling into a new camp ahead of a hunt. We're a bit tired and sore from the 9-hour drive across from Vic, but I'll tell you this, when the car's finally off and you get out and breathe the cool, clean air, the excitement certainly starts to build, especially when it's the first big deer trip of the year and the rut is due to kick in any minute. While I've been over here to the southeast in previous years stalking fallow, this time we're chasing the big boys, the heavyweight champions of the Mallee, the roaring red stags. As usual, it's with my good mate and Beyond the Divide South Australian specialist, Morgan Trenaman. He's here getting camp set up behind me, so we'll head over to have a quick chat and get the heads up on the patch we're hunting and make a plan for the next few days. How's camp, mate? You set?
All set, ready for a few days.
Ready for another rut?
Bloody oath.
It's about to start. Best time of the year?
It is.
I know you love it. So you've had a few good seasons up here, buddy. What's the plan? I've never been here before. We're rolling in pretty green and blind, but what's the layout of the scrub, etc., and what's the plan?
Yeah, so she's pretty thick scrub, although there are a lot of open areas here, so it's good stalking. But got to change tactics a little bit. Early morning, late evening, we'll be hitting the sides where the deer should be coming in or going to feed.
Yep.
So we'll be hitting them first thing or last thing.
Yep.
During the day, we'll be chasing them around in the scrub.
Yep.
This time of the year, bucks, red stags love wandering around.
Yeah.
So
we're just playing that percentage game, aren't we?
We are.
It's right on the start of it, where they're on the move.
it is. It's right on the start for fallow.
Yep.
But on reds, we should be on the pick of it, I reckon.
Yep, and you've heard a few in other parts of the state. They're starting to crank up.
They're going very well at the moment.
All right, so fingers crossed, and maybe the weather's on our side and a bit of luck, and they start to vocalise and we can get into some of that action.
Sure.
Well, over the years and in previous seasons of Beyond the Divide, I've hunted red deer up north in Queensland and over the Tasman in NZ. But this is the first time I've hunted them down here in South Australia, and the first time I've hunted them on flat country out of the mountains. Having said that, it's not going to be easy. I've got absolutely no experience in this area, and I could count the number of red deer I've seen in South Australia on one hand. But as you know, I'm always up for a challenge. Come first light tomorrow, it's on. So bring on the morning. With everything unpacked and camp pretty much squared away, I've got one more important job to do, and that's make myself a roaring horn. With the rut kicking in and the stags being vocal and us trying to roar them in, you've got to make or intimidate the sound of a red stag. And this can be as simple or as complicated as you like. I like to keep it natural. You can get electric callers and things like that these days, but that's really not my style. There's something very cool about imitating the stag yourself and vocalising or making the call. To keep it ultra simple, you can just do it with your hands, and it's just about creating that resonance and that volume that's similar to a stag. And as we were just saying off camera, you can never really get too loud, except when it gets into the intricacies of the call, but we'll go into that later. So all it is really creating a resonance chamber. You can get some plastic callers, but this is old school, going back thousands of years, how they used to do it, with a roaring horn being the cast horn of a cow. And this is given to me, this one was given to me by my buddy Clark McGee up north. And there's a few people that know as much about red deer in Australia than him, so I'm thinking and hoping that this might be a bit of a lucky charm. So all I'm going to do here is cut the ends off to square it up. I'm going to cut probably through about there to get sort of a 40-50 mil mouthpiece, and drill a couple of holes in so I can sling it over my shoulder, and that's going to be my amplification resonance chamber for making the roar. And it's as ultra simple and as ultra traditional as you can get, and got that beautiful tone of the natural cow horn. Making a primitive hunting tool like this certainly isn't rocket surgery, and after a couple of quick straight cuts with the handsaw through the very solid horn, it was then time for a sand to round off the sharp edges so it's nice and smooth against your body and also around your mouth and lips. All that was needed to finish is to drill a couple of holes so I could thread through and tie off a shoelace for a neck strap, and bingo, a Clark McGee special. Roaring horn, ready for action in the morning. We've had a magic sunrise on this first morning. You can see there, it lit up really fiery red this morning. It's just backing off now.
It's about half an hour after first light. We were up and going about 4:30 this morning to get out here on the fringe well before first light. As we spoke about last night, this is the fringe edge. We're trying to catch the animals coming off the grazing country and back into the scrub. We've seen a few fallow, just a mob of does, and there's a few roos out on the edge here. A good sign was the reds did go during the night. We heard a few faint roars sort of scattered right around camp, but it did seem that they were out on the edges where Morgan predicted they would be. So as we planned last night, we're just doing a big scout around the edges. I'm not going to roar just yet. We're just going to listen. We might let one go later, but definitely going to let them try and do the talking, give themselves away early. We've got a few days up our sleeves, so I don't want to go letting every stag know we're here. While the red sign's been pretty quiet, this is pretty interesting. So, we've seen quite a bit of fallow sign, and this is a fallow buck scrape. And this is definitely this morning. I was up a couple of times in the night listening for reds, and about probably 2 or 3 a.m. the dew really started. You can see the dew still holding on these Mallee leaves here, and the dew's set on top of this underneath. It's dry. So the bucks this time of year really get on the wander, get on the move, start scraping up. They can really dig some decent scrapes in this country because it's so soft. I was just having a laugh to Greg saying we've seen some big ones in this country. They nearly dig themselves a bunco and they get really fired up. So there's a good chance that when we're looking for these red stags, we'll come across a fallow buck. I'm not going to pass him up if there's a good opportunity on one of them for sure. We're about 2 hours into this stalk. It's been pretty quiet once the sun's come up. Getting into the bush here, there's a lot more fallow sign, and this is a much higher chance for a stag to start up. Just going to let maybe 1 or 2 roars go now. See if Annie's going to answer me around here. This soft sand in this country makes for really good tracking, and on this particular game trail we finally found some decent red marks, and you can easily see the difference between the much smaller fallow and the larger red. This fallow here, you can just barely squeeze sort of 3 fingers in, and similar sort of length if you like. But the red, particularly a red stag, it's like a samba print and even bigger. You can nearly get 3 to 4 fingers in there, no worries. And a red stag will be very long too, compared to a samba, which is about 1/3 of the size bigger generally than a red. Again, the samba is quite small, but a red has that really long foot. So they're the kind of marks we're looking for at the moment.
That morning slipped away fast, and the red stags just didn't want to risk falling in our trap. With the day heating up to a scorcher, we gave it away, but we're back in the afternoon to try and turn things around.
We're suffering a bit from the old hot rut syndrome, which means it's too hot and nothing's happening. It's a cranker of a day-to-day temperature-wise. It's coming up to 5 o'clock and it's still in the mid-20s. If I was a rutting stag, I wouldn't really be wanting to carry on too much either. But we've got to still keep doing the miles. So as opposed to the morning hunt where we're trying to catch the animals coming off the fringe, we've come up to the fringe again, but we're hunting the bush and trying to catch them as they come out. So a couple of hours till dark,
if that. And hopefully, if this weather cools right before, last light, maybe one of these stags might crank up.
Ahead of us was a huge expanse of relatively featureless Mallee scrub, and in terrain like this, it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed by the level of difficulty involved in trying to locate elusive animals like deer. Persistence and patience is always the key to success, and with good glass and consistent time in behind them, despite the odds that might seem against you, something is invariably bound to show up.
Certainly staying warm tonight. We haven't seen a whole lot this afternoon or heard anything. We did actually see a nice fallow buck. He was just moving through the Mallee across from us on another little rise, but he's vanished. But we found a nice clearing about the size of a football oval kind of thing in the bottom of one of these shallow guts leading up to the farmland behind me. So it's probably as good a place as any to set up for the last hour or so of light. 6 o'clock now. I've probably got an hour, maybe a bit more before it drops away. I've ranged it with the binos. It's 150 metres down to the centre. Got a set of shooting sticks so we can just sit back and see if anything's going to appear on these edges or walk through to feed on the lucerne that's up here behind us.
The wind was good and our visibility was good, so I got set up on the sticks, confident that if anything came into the clear within a couple of 100 metres, I'd be in with a solid chance. The Mallee scrub behind us broke up our outline perfectly, so now all that was left was to sit and wait. After a long day without much success, I was really hoping I'd made the right move, but as the sun all but slipped away, I thought our chances had gone with it as well. But luck gave us one more roll of the dice.
Oh, last light has given it to us. I just gave a bit of a roar to see if we could pull anything out of the last bit of light. And Greg went to grab the camera and heard a stick break behind us, something, and what turns out, I think, is that white fallow buck, that light-coloured fallow buck I saw before, has come in with another one. I've just shot him at about 40, 50 metres down here in the Mallee. He's down. Oh, just when you think you're having a bad day, it turns good. Let's go and check him out.
Well, that was a pretty awesome opportunity that just presented. A prime rutting fallow buck, and this is the guy we saw before. I picked out this really light colour through the Mallee as he disappeared over a knob. I think I saw this palm, and that was what got the heart pumping a bit, but he disappeared. We had a look for him and couldn't find him. But waiting out, and I'd said to Greg, I reckon we're going to get skunked tonight. It's going to be pretty quiet, and then your fortunes changed just like that. So, beautiful buck. There was another one with him actually. He was paralleling. They were just pacing each other out like they do at this stage of the rut. Greg was able to give him a little mew call, mew, and it just paused him enough for me to get a shot. One shot right down here in the engine room, and he fell over. Using the Seiko carbon light in 308. And this last light, the Steiner GS3, really sucked in the light and gave me a clear little scope picture. So I'm really thrilled. I've been looking for a really white, light colour phase Menile buck for a long time, and this has filled that slot for me beautifully.
The previous evening's success with the fallow buck had us into camp late but on a high, and we were all hoping it meant things were on the change for the better, but the weather had other plans. Early on our second morning, we were into it well before light, out listening for roaring stags, but conditions had deteriorated badly. Overnight, the wind had grown into a gale and the temperature had stayed uncomfortably high, probably about the least favourable conditions for trying to get animals to vocalise in the rut. Nonetheless, we made the most of the poor conditions and kept at it, searching and listening, targeting any sheltered pockets we could find. The morning did turn up some success in a nice red castie, so that proved they were out there somewhere, but by late morning we'd already done some serious hours without any result. So I headed back to camp to wait out the heat and wind, hoping that it would back off soon. By late arvo, it looked like things were calming down, so to change it up a bit, we pushed deep into the Mallee to scope out some clearings that Morgan had previously known to hold deer. The terrain looked promising and we did find some good stag rubs, but the only thing out and about were the roos. As the sun faded, the wind eventually dropped out and the air cooled, indicating that at long last a cold change was moving in, and we're all hoping that in the morning things might finally start to turn on.
I hope the mic can pick that up. It's finally all happening, mate. It is. We've done it pretty tough, but this morning the weather change has kicked it into gear. There's fallow bucks going over there. And we've got another red stag up here who's just given a couple of moans as well. We're right on the fringe, so we need him to come in. But it's exciting, we've got options. It is. Oh, it gets the adrenaline pumping, doesn't it, mate? Big bucks grunting away. Good throaty red up top, maybe a smaller animal as well. There's probably a dozen or so fallow at least up on the hill behind me here. It seems like there's a dominant buck with a couple of young ones. Really annoying him. That was a big guy. Yeah. Righto, we're going to get into position. A frantic little session there as the sun came up with the bucks going and a couple of stags starting to talk, but it's all gone quiet. Gone from hero to zero pretty quick. I'm not sure what happened with that fella that seemed to disappear into the neighbour's place. But we did have a red come up behind us in the scrub and give a couple of roars. I'm going to see if I can get him going again now.
The change in the weather sure had helped to flick the switch, but the action that morning was definitely all right along the fringe. There was a few fallow around, but the bucks were staying hidden and out of bounds on the neighbours where we couldn't hunt. So with them not wanting to come through to our side of the fence, we turned back into the scrub and put the time in trying to stalk in on the red stags that had been roaring well earlier that morning. The tall fresh rubs indicated we were right in the zone and the breeze was good, but the stags were too smart and we never heard another roar.
The time has just flown by on this hunt, as they often do. We've been having too much fun. So unfortunately we found ourselves at the last evening and the last stalk of the trip. With the reds being a bit quiet, even though they fired up this morning, they switched off just as quickly as they switched on. So we're kind of playing the odds, and I really need to fill my freezer. The summer's taken its toll on the freezer, it's empty, and Morgan reckons this spot down here, this part of the property, is a good place to sit off and get a shot at some fallow as they feed out. It's 6 o'clock. Sun's just about to drop and get into that witching hour. So fingers crossed we can spot a nice little meat animal. And I can get the carbon light onto it and come home with the goods. We've actually just spotted a mob of feral goats down here. They've started bleating and carrying on. They're only a couple hundred metres. That's a chance too good to miss. I'll try and pick up a meat goat.
Well, didn't that get busy? For sneaking down and trying to get a meat goat. That turned into a pretty frenzied little session. I love shooting goats, always have, always will. Pretty exciting bonus when they turn up on your deer block. The property owner did say there was some around. He was very specific on us trying to get rid of as many as possible. So I did my bit there, cleaned up 5. There's a billy there, 4 nannies. I went for one of these nannies first. These 2 are the ideal sort of meat goats. Young, tender animals, they'll be beautiful. Yeah, the freezer's full now. Just want to top it up with a bit of prime fallow before sunset if we can.
Moroka 30 is the proud hunting clothing and equipment sponsor of Beyond the Divide, custom designed for our local conditions and uniquely Australian. Ask for it in store at your local gun shop or check out the full range at moroka30.com.au.